Hello, innovators, entrepreneurs, and risk takers. Welcome to another episode of Web3 with Sam Kamani podcast. And today on this podcast episode, I am interviewing James Quinn Kumar from Binance, Australia, New Zealand. And today he is going to be sharing about Binance's 8 years journey, as well as where he sees the whole crypto industry going, as well as he shares some key things from his time or his work at Facebook or companies like TikTok, and where he sees this whole social media and content generation is going, because he has so much experience when it comes to business to consumer type of products, as well as he shares what has made, in his view, Binance so successful that they have managed to get 280 million registered users at the time of this recording. We also share about coin all-time highs and what it means for regular investors. And as always, everything that we talk about in this podcast, no part of that should be used as financial, legal, and as always, do not use any part of this podcast episode as financial or legal advice. And as always, nothing that we talk about in this podcast episode should be taken as financial advice. And as always, please leave a review and share this episode after listening to this podcast episode. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. James, welcome to the show. Looking forward to interviewing you, especially being a big fan of Binance. I also do use Binance, and I've been a Binance user for quite some time and have known you guys here in New Zealand and Australia for a while. So, my first question is, how did you get involved in all things crypto and blockchain and just this technology?
Yeah, great question. And first off, thanks for having me, Sam. Really excited to jump into this conversation. My journey mimics a lot of people in the last cycle, I guess you'd call it, crypto cycle. So about 5 years ago, when everyone was in lockdown because of COVID, I started reading more about investing, about trading. We were at home and no one was spending any cash going out and about, and thinking about how I could put my money or my savings to best use. So I started reading a lot of books, and then obviously the market dipped quite violently in March 2020 before the very V-shaped bounce. It went on a tear, both crypto and the conventional. And yeah, it sparked an interest in investing, trading, and crypto in particular, because it's such a new asset class. And so I dived deep into crypto and blockchain technology. As I mentioned off camera, I'm a massive fan of podcasts. So most of my learning came through podcasts. And yeah, it really sparked my interest. And at the time, I was at TikTok in Australia. So they just launched in early 2020. And it was obviously a really exciting time, a really exciting business, very similar to crypto in the way that it is disruptive technology, growing adoption really fast. But over that period, the next couple of years, I found myself consuming more and more content around crypto and blockchain technology. And I found it taking more and more of my interest in my spare time. And then I thought, if I think this is going to be something big or even bigger in 10 years' time, then I might as well learn from the inside. And so I started keeping my eye out for any opportunities in the marketing side in crypto and blockchain, particularly around the exchange side, because I love B2C businesses. And then the opportunity came up to join Binance and I jumped at it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Binance is quite young in New Zealand. I think 2 to 3 years old, I think, from my memory. How about when did it origins in Australia? When did it start there, or has it been there for a few years?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's one of the things that attracts me to Binance. It's a globally recognized business now, but it's got a very startup mentality. We just celebrated our 8th-year anniversary on Monday with a celebration in Auckland. Over 120 people came down on a Monday night to celebrate our milestone and also the Bitcoin all-time high, which happened the same day. And it was great to meet you there, and thank you for coming down. But yeah, 8 very short years, Binance has gone from a startup to the world's largest crypto exchange by volume and by users. So we just ticked over 280 million users worldwide last week. But our mission is to onboard 1 billion people into crypto. What attracted me the most was this global reach, but also startup mentality. And with that, it launched in 2017, it quickly, with a focus on security, user experience, and customer support, became the biggest exchange by volume because people recognized that it was taking on board community feedback and adapting the product. And so we're famous for really low fees, really high liquidity now, and just that commitment to giving users the best trading experience possible. And with that, it gained a lot of scale, moved into a lot of countries. But as a business matures and as crypto regulations mature and start to be developed in different regions, we applied for registration as and when they came up. So in Australia, we've been registered since 2020. And as you mentioned, we launched in New Zealand in October 2022.
Amazing. Earlier, we were talking about, and I was saying how I work with institutional clients, and we have seen that there is a huge demand or need for Binance from them, primarily because they look for liquidity, and Binance has really good liquidity in quite a few markets and for quite a few different pairs, like crypto pairs. I feel like that is part of their success there in the institutional side of things. What about for B2C? Because you do come from a lot of B2C background. What would you say would be the one or two key things that has helped Binance get to this level of success?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think at the core of our business, we're a trading platform, right?
Yes.
And so that focus on providing a wide range of tokens to trade, I think for over 300 different tokens now, but also unique and specific pairs for different markets. And I think that's somewhere where we've really excelled, as you mentioned. And what appeals to those institutional investors, deep liquidity, really tight spreads, low fees, we believe also applies to everyday investors, whether people are coming on to day trade or trade certain pairs over at the medium or long term, or even long-term hodlers. Everyone benefits from that scale and those low fees and that deep liquidity. We really concentrate on just enhancing the experience, the spot trading platform that we have. And we believe that what caters to institutional investors will also cater to more retail clients in that respect. And yeah, spot trading is at the core of everything that we do. So much so that there's a number of other brokers in different regions and even across Australia and New Zealand that use our platform to trade and hedge their positions on as well, which is a great testament. From a marketing perspective, I'm often competing with other brands, both Australia and New Zealand, but they're also customers of ours. So it's an interesting relationship that we have to balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about tokens and token pairs, and as Bitcoin's reached all-time highs few times in the last, I don't know, 3 weeks. What do you think has contributed to it?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Actually, off the back of the all-time high, I've had a number of conversations with users, a number of different podcasts and news outlets just around what's driven this recent run. I think there's a few things, right? I think over the course of the year, there's been quite favorable macroeconomic environment. Everyone's been quite optimistic, both across equities. We saw gold have a run up and across crypto in general. Obviously, what's dampened that enthusiasm has been some of the geopolitical tensions that we've seen across the Middle East, which is going to spook the market, but also some of the macroeconomic policy changes, most notably the tariffs in the US, which again put the brake on what was the underlying optimism. Interestingly, what we observed on our platform was people were still staying, even though the markets were treading water, just playing off the latest news developments, people were still staying in the crypto ecosystem. Before, we'd see people cash out their crypto into fiat. But this year, more than ever, we've seen people rotate from their crypto into stablecoins. And we've seen stablecoins have massive adoption. I think they peaked at $250 billion USD in terms of market cap in June. Just go to show that people, even when there is a bit more fear in the market, they're staying in the crypto ecosystem, just rotating into those stables. And then also a rotation from some of the more speculative assets, altcoins, meme coins, I've heard, into the blue chips. People have returned the flight to safety to Bitcoin, to Ethereum, and into Solana. And that's definitely a trend we observed across our New Zealand users. And so all of what I'm trying to say is fundamentally, we're in a pretty strong position despite some of the macroeconomic and geopolitical headwinds. And so we were always optimistic that when things settled from an external perspective, the underlying fundamentals of the crypto industry and the markets was quite strong. And so that's what we've seen, right? So in June, Bitcoin actually wicked down below 100K on the 22nd of June. It was like $1.5 billion in liquidations. But as the macroeconomic situation has eased, we've seen more confidence return to the market and more buying of Bitcoin, most notably through the ETFs, which is a new vehicle in the US in particular for institutional investors to come to the market. And so some of the flows we've seen into early July have been the highest ever. I think the 7th of July, the second largest week of Bitcoin inflows since they were launched in April last year. So there was a lot of demand from both institutional and retail. And then obviously into July, we've seen that manifest in multiple all-time highs. To give you an example, we send out a weekly newsletter for Binance Australia and New Zealand. I was writing the email last Friday and it was like Bitcoin all-time high, 116,000 US dollars. And then by the time I sent an email, the market had moved. It was like, oh wait, we're up to 117,000. So
Yes.
redo the banners and redo the copy. And then by the time I did that, a minute later, it hit 118,000 USD. And so that's one of the things about this industry. It's so dynamic. Things are always moving and you have to keep on top of it and adapt your plans. But luckily it settled at 118,000 last Friday. So I was able to get the email out. Otherwise I might still be there adjusting it. But yeah, since then we've seen it run up to 123,000 US dollars on Monday, the day we had the event, which was awesome. And there was such an energy from our users that came down. And I think most notably for New Zealand, it also hit earlier that day.
200K New Zealand dollars.
Exactly.
Everyone was pumped there at the event. Like I was talking with a lot of people there and everyone was like, oh yeah, it's crossed 200. Because it's such a psychological big mark number that people never thought some time ago that it would reach that.
Yeah. Like you said, the symbolism of 200K really resonated with people. And I think the analogy, especially in New Zealand, where property is such a core part of people's and such a core part of the economy, and to think that one Bitcoin now can some places represent a house deposit, I think really changes people's perception of how legitimate this asset class is and where it can potentially go from here. So yeah, a very monumental week, I'd say, for crypto. And I was grateful to be in Auckland on Monday to be able to 200 NZD.
Yeah, absolutely. I did see that as well. And New Zealand has been, I don't know, it's just like every barbecue conversation was for like decades just ruled by property. And if you're off, then it's about rental property. And now I'm starting to see that people are talking about other things as well. But still, I would still say compared to globally, New Zealand is it's still got a long way to go, I feel like. And it's also about building trust and all these alternative assets. And what has your view been in Australia? Do you see a difference to New Zealand or is it very similar environment?
I think there's a lot of similarities, right? Especially when it comes to property investing being a core part of people's journey as they grow up and getting on the housing ladder.
Yes.
But I would say there is a slight difference in adoption rates across both Australia and New Zealand. So the last stats that we saw come out in New Zealand suggested that 14%, this was July last year, so probably slightly outdated. And I know that's probably increased in the last year, but to give you an example, it's 14% adoption amongst Kiwi adults, which was up from 10% in 2022. So fast growth more recently. But just to compare, in Australia, 20% of people hold crypto right now that came out, and 25% have ever held. So slightly ahead in terms of that adoption, but very similar trends. People who historically would have invested in property are now looking at alternative assets, most notably amongst Gen Z and millennials.
Absolutely.
people are getting priced out of the housing market.
Because
But
we can buy $500 worth of Bitcoin. As in a younger generation, they can do that. They cannot buy anything, any property for that money. It's like they
yeah,
have been priced out, or you need $1 million or 200K in a deposit. That's the average price in most of New Zealand and Australia.
I talk to a lot of young people through the creators that we kind of work with or collaborate with, or even our users. Or if I wear my Binance shirt on the street, people will come up
Yes.
and have a conversation with me. And more often than not, these younger people, I saw a phrase coined in a publication last year, Generation Rent, people that have just given up on the idea that they'll ever be able to buy a property, but still understand the importance of investing and compounding over time and how that can really increase their returns. And so, yeah, we're starting to see more and more people diversify into equities and traditional stocks, but then also digital assets like crypto, which is a really interesting trend to see.
Absolutely. This whole industry is actually quite new, quite young. After Bitcoin, Ethereum is the second biggest digital asset out there. And that just recently reached its 10th year milestone. Whereas Binance, being an exchange, has already reached 8th milestone. There's very few exchanges, if there's any I can think of, that have reached this sort of a milestone. What do you think has been contributed to such longevity for Binance?
Yeah, it's a good question. In an industry that moves very fast and has experienced
Yes.
a lot of volatility and a lot of like negative PR, I'd say
Yeah.
crypto has had a pretty poor reputation over time, whether it's
Yeah.
the use of crypto for illicit activities historically or scams more recently. And it's something that as a marketer, I think about how do we change the brand perception of crypto and make it more mainstream, ease those barriers to entry and build trust. And I think to answer your question, how Binance has ridden those waves and come through some of those headwinds, I think it is this focus on our users. And our founder was very adamant that users come first. Any feedback a user gives us, we'll take seriously and look to enhance our product or improve the experience. Any complaints that come through CS, any feedback that comes through CS. I think I was listening to a podcast the other day about CZ talking about the very early days, and his focus was 100% on CS. I think Binance was the first exchange to have 24-hour CS. It's really simple things, right? When you think about tech and businesses and just how long the internet's been around for, some of these things are just best practice from an ecom perspective. They have a CS function that responds to questions in a certain time frame. But I think crypto was so new, and I think it had to go through all of these like growing pains to be accepted, to build trust. You have to listen to people actively, be there when they need you. And especially in times of crisis, hacks were very prevalent years and years ago because the technology was still being built out and bad actors would exploit it. But now, also, for example, we've got thousands of engineers and people looking at the security and looking at how we can make our platform the most robust. And so I think that focus on users and doing right by users and listening to their feedback has been really core component of Binance's growth. And I think that also feeds from a community perspective. Like we already mentioned, on Monday, we had a meetup in Auckland, 120 people came down on a Monday night, which still blows my mind. And it never ceases to amaze me, the enthusiasm and passion people have for this industry. And that's been a core part of Binance's engagement with users. At any one point, there's 2, 3, 4 events happening globally every day, whether it's colleagues in Argentina, in Italy, in Vietnam. They're running meetups, whether it's a coffee shop takeover to talk about the latest trends, or whether it's a big super meetup in Kenya, for example, with hundreds of people. Like we run a lot of events because we believe being with the community, listening to feedback, understanding some of the trends, understanding some of the pain points they have, and understanding some of the solutions that need to be built out has definitely been the core part of how we get that feedback. And I think that focus on users and taking on board that feedback to develop a product that's fit for their needs has been where we've seen the most success, but not without its challenges. People come into crypto with different levels of understanding. You mentioned yourself that you work very closely with institutional investors, and their demands and requirements will be very different from someone that's buying their first crypto.
Absolutely. And this is back in the day. I'm talking 2007. My first startup was in e-commerce, and back then, this is 17, 18 years ago, people were very skeptical to buy things online, use their credit card online, and very similar to the adoption rates that we have now with crypto, we had back then with using credit card online and buying things online. Of course, things change a lot in 2020 after COVID, but this is 2007 I'm talking about. And the number one thing I realized was that customer service is the key to provide the fastest delivery possible, even in few hours if possible, where no one else was doing it. And having a human on the phone, as soon as phone rings, pick up, and then the person picks up the phone, has to sort out, not transfer the client around to three different people and make them wait for half an hour and all that. It's you cannot grow in a B2C environment if you do not have good customer service. And I think that has been one of the secrets for Binance. And so many crypto businesses do not focus on customer service, do not look after that, think that product or tech is everything. But most customers don't care about tech as long as it works and it does what they want it to do. But if they are not treated well by customer service, that's something that they really remember, and that would make them move to another platform or another product. That's such a good insight that you were mentioning by CZ. And I think that has contributed a lot. We were just talking about looking back 8 years. What do you think is coming ahead for Binance? What's Binance going to focus on, and where does Binance see industry going towards?
That's a great question. I think you alluded to it. Just the competition's growing. There's more exchanges, there's more businesses coming into the space, offering tailored solutions to different users and different segments of the market. So we don't take for granted our position as the world's largest. And we know that we have to constantly adapt and innovate to keep people on our platform and using our service. And so I think to that end, there's a number of different products that we've got under development to satisfy our users' needs. But then more than that, it's just understanding that this industry is still very new, right? And one of the reasons I moved into the space was because I believed in the underlying technology, blockchain technology, and the number of use cases for blockchain technology across multiple different industries. Right now, we talk about Binance and crypto being the financialization of digital assets, but there's a number of other applications. The core engine of our business right now is our spot trading platform. But ultimately, we want to be an ecosystem where people can interact with any Web3 service that they want and provide that safety and security and pathway and education for how they can interact with those services. So more recently, we've launched Web3 Wallet, which allows people access through Binance and abstracts away some of the complexities with setting up your own wallet to access different services in Web3. And we're going to continuously look at ways to give more functionality and utility to people when they're interacting with Web3 products and services, some of which haven't even been built out yet. I think before I joined Binance years ago, over 3 years ago, I was listening to CZ on a podcast talk about how he wants Binance to be the Google of Web3. You've got your maps, your mail, your photos, and all the different applications built out into what is an amazing ecosystem that allows people to access the web and all the functionality of the web. For me, there's the opportunity to be the equivalent in Web3, whether someone wants to store their digital assets or NFTs or link their wallet and their crypto to different gaming applications. There's a whole lot of functionality and products and services to be built out. And I'm excited to see that play out. But I can't share any specifics right now, but we're definitely looking towards the future and how we fit in and facilitate people's engagement with Web3.
That's very cool. And talking about innovations and future, I recently saw that there was a new survey about Kiwi crypto investors. Can you tell me a bit more about it or some key findings from that?
I think Kiwis are naturally optimistic, and some of the sentiment that we picked up in the survey is definitely relevant to the sentiment more globally, but I'd say even more on the optimistic side. So I'll give you an example. Over 50% of our respondents, and we surveyed over 200 users, very bullish about the outlook of crypto, which again is really encouraging for us. And I think again, going back to the community events, you could feel that optimism in the room. There's a very tangible sense of everyone's excited about where this industry is heading. Some of the people I spoke to say happy Bitcoin all the time. They're like, oh yeah, sure. They already had an eye on the future. They were like, of course it was going to hit 200,000 New Zealand dollars. Why wouldn't it? And I think that optimism definitely came through in our second results. Another one that I think it's something more interesting that we've seen over the last couple of years. And I think which underpins the shift in the industry. If I said the previous cycle, there was a massive run up in 2021. There was a lot of people into the market chasing some of the returns and trading in and out of positions to lock in that or try and lock in that return. However, what we're seeing now is more and more people come into the space with a long-term view and taking on long-term positions. So less focus on trading and more focus on buying and holding. And in crypto, as you're aware, we call that hodling. Holding on for dear life, I think, is where it originally came from. 50% of our respondents said that they take a long-term like hodling approach to crypto. And I think that speaks to this change in mentality and this maturing of the industry away from short-term gains and to more long-term price appreciation.
That's very positive to see and to hear about that. What do you think is next for crypto as an industry? What innovations coming or what new tech in crypto are you most bullish about?
Yeah, I think I'll probably go a bit personal on this one. I've worked in a number of different industries, all internet, B2C businesses, whether it's gaming or socials. I was at Facebook in London, and then, as I mentioned more recently, TikTok in Australia. And these platforms have gotten to the scale they have based on user-generated content. Facebook does produce its own content. TikTok does produce some of its own content, but in large, it's through individual normal people or individual creators who are producing these amazing video skits or educational material. I've always had an appreciation for people that produce content, and it's one of the reasons I've got so much respect for you and what you do. And in addition to everything else you're doing from a business perspective, making content, focusing on education and putting that out in the world, other people to consume without charging, I think is incredible. And I think the world is full of amazing minds putting out this amazing content. But historically, these platforms haven't allowed them to monetize as effectively. I think YouTube's the best platform when it comes to monetization.
Absolutely. YouTube is hands down the best platform. Even though this is audio platform and not there, I would 100% say that I've seen creators consistently make an income around the world. You could be in Kenya or India. Like TikTok only monetizes for 5 countries or something out of the 195, whereas YouTube is the only one that I know of that's consistently good. But continue.
Yeah. And that kind of feeds into my point, right? Like there must be a better model or a better way for creators to monetize or benefit from some of the content that they're putting out into the world. And that's, again, my marketer hat. That's one of the reasons that attracted me to the Web3 industry was this idea of digital ownership. And I can foresee a time in the future where individual creators own the IP to their creations and license that out to different platforms, and they're able to track the usage and accrue value from the platforms in a lot fairer way, depending on how their content's being consumed. And I think that digital ownership piece, as I mentioned, I think there's so far to go in that direction. And that really excites me in the future. And whether it's through like social platforms or whether it's the different platform or whether the mechanic comes about in a more organic way, I think I'm hopeful that we'll see creators get rewarded for the creations that they're making and the monetization model of the internet move away from advertising, which is historically what it's been. And we've seen a massive concentration in a number of platforms to a more democratic, decentralized pathway where people are getting, like I said, that digital ownership and the benefit from some of the content they're creating.
That's a very interesting view. I do agree with that. That'd be amazing to see that happen. As a content creator myself, I've put out 300 plus long form interviews with some of the top L1, L2 founders and so on. what I'm seeing the change happening right now, it is AI agents producing content, which is insane the amount of content that, and we are only at the cusp of it. So I feel like all these models are gonna break. TikTok and Instagram Reels and everything is going to break because the cost of content creation goes to zero from being very high. It costs thousands of dollars for any brand or anything to have 5,000 agents creating 200,000 hours of content in 3 days. What happens when it gets flooded with this? The algorithms are going to break in that pressure. I don't know how it's going to keep up or what's going to happen to these platforms. Maybe they will not allow AI generated content. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's
Yeah,
going to be interesting to see.
I think it's so interesting. I think as people are really interested in technology and the internet and businesses built on top of the internet, I think it's fascinating to observe what's happening and then also be part of it. I think a couple of things on that AI agent piece. One, like, I agree, like the cost of creating content is going to go to zero, but what are these models being trained on? And they're being trained on content produced by other people, whether it's
Yes,
like blog posts or social posts or long form video content or audio podcasts like that
yeah,
you've created. And so for me, I'd love to see an acknowledgement
absolutely.
where that content's been trained on and a reward for the content creators. And can crypto or can Web3 blockchain technology facilitate micropayments back to the source that actually fed into the content that's been produced? In an ideal world, I think I'd love that. And I think that'd be the fairest thing. Whether or not that happens, I think yet to be seen. And then also just again, talking about Web3 crypto, AI agents, if they're going to be carrying out tasks and working autonomously based on whatever brief is set, they're going to have to work together. And within working together, as in any business, there's trade, there's payments for services. And so how will value move between these different agents working autonomously? I don't think individual AI agents are going to be able to set up a bank account, KYC, a payment
Is going to be the network
blockchain.
of choice for them to get paid, pay other agents themselves. So that's
Yeah.
what the hope is. So sorry to interrupt, but the previous interview to this I did was with Matthew Graham from Rise Labs. He's very big on Twitter, and Rise Labs is the fund that invested at seed stage in Solana and quite a few other Polygon and quite a few other well-known chains and stuff. And his thesis is exactly the same as what you are saying. And that's why I was so excited. I have to tell you this or share this with you. There is the same that, that blockchain and crypto is the network, the currency of choice for agents. It's hard as it is even for a human to open a bank account, let alone an AI agent to open a bank account. So the only thing that makes sense is them having a DeFi account and then the agent going and doing the task for you and paying for your task to whoever they need to pay to. And so they will need accounts. And that's where blockchain makes sense. But yeah, continue.
No, I think that's it. I love this conversation because I think
Yes.
there's so much yet to be built out. We think we can see the direction of travel or what would make sense. But I'm really excited to be part of this industry and part of seeing how this develops. And even people talk about AI and massive user and proponent of it, but these technologies are going to work together in a way that we think we know where it's going. And yeah, it'll be exciting to see it come to life.
Absolutely. I have just two more questions. And one of them is talking about the future and talking about what's happening in the industry. What are Binance's biggest goals for future and what do the next few years look like from Binance's perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think from my perspective, I'm really passionate about this industry and driving adoption. I mentioned already that our mission at a global level is to onboard 1 billion people into crypto. We're up to 285 million. So we're over a quarter of the way. There's still a long way to go. More locally across New Zealand, I'd love to be part of what drives that next wave of Kiwi crypto investors and push that 14% into the 20%, 30%.
Amazing.
Yeah, penetration. And then I guess, yeah, for me personally, from a marketing perspective, I'm also really excited about how we leverage the underlying technology for marketing. We're still a Web3 company. We do a lot of Web2 marketing. We run Facebook ads. We're doing a lot of investing in SEO and our educational platform, Binance Academy. But how do we leverage Web3 technology and blockchain transactions to understand our users better and to understand our users' behavior better, to then service them better from a marketing perspective? So I think all of those things are going to be built out, which I'm really excited about. But yeah, my main focus and our main focus is to help educate and onboard the next billion people in crypto globally.
Amazing. That's very exciting to hear. And my final question is, what is your ask? Are you looking for anything? Are you looking for any partnerships, people to check out any particular piece of content or anything? Feel free to share.
Yeah, for sure. As I kind of mentioned, we're really excited about partnering with, so obviously crypto's gone through massive adoption, and people that just came into the space on crypto Twitter and those communities look very different to the people that are going to come into the space if we're successful in achieving our mission. And we're really keen to partner with creators, micro-influencers, anyone with a platform and an interest in crypto and blockchain technology to help to work with, essentially, to produce content, whether it's entertaining, educational, to tap into new audiences and to bring their audiences along on the journey. And we've been very fortunate in New Zealand, actually, to partner with a couple of really young, fun, interesting creators who aren't from the crypto industry or crypto specific, and feed off their energy and their ideas. And so, yeah, I guess the ask of your audience would be, if you are interested in the space and you do have a platform and you do have some ideas and enthusiasm, then yeah, definitely reach out to me, whether it's on LinkedIn or Twitter. DMs are open and keen to explore any partnerships.
Fantastic. So what I'll do is I will also leave links to you and to Binance and people who can reach out to in the show notes, description, or comments on every platform that this is going to go out in the next 10 days, so people can reach out. And James, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you and learning more about what Binance is up to in Australia and New Zealand. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening or watching this episode of the Web3 with Sam Kamani podcast. By now, you know the drill. Leave a comment or share this episode with a friend and leave a review. I would love to hear from you. So that's why my DMs are open. Reach out to me, especially if you are a founder building a product in Web3. Then I would love to hear from you. What are your challenges? Is there anything that I can help you or my community can help you with? Thank you once again and wish you best of luck in building your startup or your project.